Hello, welcome back to the channel. We are going to do, I had said for the month of March, we were going to do different things that had to do Irish, St. Patrick's Day, what have you. People normally think of potatoes when they think of the Irish, rightly or wrongly. I believe potatoes are grown all over the world. But this is going to be how potatoes saved the world. Okay, and this is from Cogito. So check them out. They have a lot of interesting videos.
What is your favorite international food? Italian spaghetti bolognese, Indian curry, Irish coddle, Chinese kung pao chicken, or Belgian chocolate? These all have one thing in common,
It all sounds
other than the
good.
fact that they're all delicious. They all rely on Native American plants.
Oh, really? Okay.
Before Columbus stumbled upon the wrong continent, famines regularly ripped through Europe, Africa, and Asia. After 1492, though, tables everywhere were introduced to corn, potatoes, peppers, tomatoes, chocolate, vanilla, and many other foods.
Okay.
Now, over 60% of the food consumed worldwide originated in the Americas. How did Native Americans create and manage these incredible crops? What amazing effects did they have? And how did potatoes and bird poop create the modern world? Well, let's find out.
Yes, let's. Potatoes and bird poop. How appetizing.
The Europe that Columbus set sail from was one that we would have a hard time imagining today. It was a continent of hunger. The populations of Northern Europe rose and fell based on grain harvests, which failed a lot. France, then one of Europe's richest countries, suffered 111 famines between 1371 and 1791.
Wow.
England lost 10% of its population to famine in 1316. Every year in Europe was like winter in Game of Thrones, is what I'm trying to say. That's why the Mediterranean was the great hub of ancient empires. The weather there was much more reliable. Rome, Persia, and Egypt were empires of grain. Northern Europe, China, India, and the people of Africa lived and died based on an unpredictable food supply. Sure, they had some crops that grew in their soil. Asia was especially lucky with rice, which is the best crop to start the game with, but a lot of land just lay unused because no known crops would grow there. Thousands of miles away, Native Americans were eating beans, corn, potato, cassava, chocolate, and squash, along with much, much more. They enjoyed probably the most nutritious diet in the world at the time, especially those in Mesoamerica and the Andes, which is surprising considering the fact that the civilizations that lived in the Andes survived in one of the world's toughest environments, but they managed to make it work somehow. How? Well, they kind of became early crop scientists. They created experimental fields all over the Andes, built at different altitudes and angles towards the sun. If disease or drought struck the crops in one place, it wouldn't affect the crops that were bred to survive just a few meters higher up or down. This practice allowed them to grow huge amounts of potatoes and corn in thousands of different varieties. The Andeans were creating new crops to give themselves a kind of crop insurance. They turned the Andes into a giant farm by building more than 1 million acres of terraced
Wow.
fields.
Very
The
intelligent.
Spanish called them andenes, which may have given us the name Andes.
Further up in North America, traditional farming centered on a small field called a milpa. Oh, by the way, I'm Tristan from Step Back History. A milpa is a field in which farmers plant a dozen crops at once, with corn, squash, and beans being the primary crops. These are known as the Three Sisters, and they're both nutritionally and environmentally complementary. Kid tested, mom approved. The corn plant's leaves protect the beans from the sun while providing a stalk for them to grow up. The vines of the squash cover the soil and capture more rain, thus preventing erosion, while also preventing weeds from growing. To thank the squash and the corn for their hard work, the beans then fix nitrogen into the soil to help the corn and squash grow. The patented Three Sisters system reduces the destruction of the plants by pests, which protects the plants without the need for chemical insecticides. The Three Sisters were planted across North America, from the Maya in Mexico all the way up to the Haudenosaunee in the US and Canada. Back to you.
Thanks, Tristan. If you'd like to learn more about the Haudenosaunee and their incredible Great Law of Peace, head over to Step Back History's channel after this video. The link is in the description, and make sure you subscribe when you're there because he puts out some fantastic videos. By choosing which seeds to plant rather than randomly throwing a handful into the soil, which was popular in Eurasia, the Native Americans developed thousands of different kinds of plants. Some of their corn grew in 3 months, others in 9. Some grew in the desert, others in the jungle. From Canada to Chile, Native Americans found the way to adapt their corn to their environment. Through trial and error, the Native Americans became early geneticists. The best example of their abilities, and one of the most influential, was their cultivation of the potato. Andean peoples were eating domesticated potatoes by 2000 BC. Over thousands of years, they developed the wild potato from a poisonous plant into a staple crop. Through their experimental plots, they developed different kinds of potatoes for every soil and weather condition they could find.
Wow.
Do you live in a drought region? There's a potato for that. Near the coast? There's a potato for that. 3,000 meters above sea level? There's a potato for that. From yellow to purple, there was a potato for everyone.
So, I mean, I had said earlier, potatoes seem to grow all over the place, and this is why. Um, the Native American people, whether North, Central, or South America, incredibly intelligent. I think that they were a lot more advanced than the Europeans ever were. And probably, the lifestyle of the Europeans in that time period where they had a bunch of serfs, under relatively few noblemen, that stifles creativity and it stifles progress. And, that was on them for having that kind of a social system, because this is the result. You have a more freer society and that everybody takes part in and can contribute knowledge to and contribute skills to. This is what you have, and that's fantastic. And as a person who likes to eat potatoes, thank you. I love potatoes in all different forms.
Potato empires rose and fell in the Andes. Inca armies marched up and down the continent, expanding their borders, fueled by their favorite tuber. At the time of the war with the Spanish, Andean farmers had developed over 3,000 different types of potato. Now, no more than 20 different types make up about 3/4 of the total potato harvest in the United States.
Right.
Okay, so the Native Americans were pretty good farmers and made a bunch of different kinds of potatoes. What does that mean to me? Why should I care? I hear you say, internet person. Well, imagine what Ireland would be like without the potato.
Exactly.
What would the Germans, the Russians, or the Scandinavians eat? The Soviet Union would never have become a superpower without potato. Germany could not have fought world wars without potato.
Wow.
The Netherlands wouldn't have one of the highest living standards in the world without potato. Europe is potato. Before 1492, Europe and the Middle East depended on wheat, rye, and oats, Asia on rice, and Africa on millet and sorghum. But these grains all have problems. Sometimes they demand too much or too little heat or water that couldn't be provided. These plants are needy and picky. But as we've seen, the Native Americans had created thousands of different kinds of crops for every imaginable environment. Whatever region of the world wanted a potato, or corn, or cassava, at least one type was perfect for their climate and soil conditions. Growing potatoes creates more food with less work than growing grains. If you turned an international rugby stadium into a potato farm, which is a perfectly normal thing to do, it would net you about 7.5 million calories.
Wow.
The same stadium planted in wheat produces only 4.2 million calories. This means that each farmer can produce more food per worker, freeing up workers for other things like inventing steam engines or invading Russia for the billionth time. Once American crops, and specifically the potato, landed in Europe, their problems with famine stopped. Historian William H. McNeill even argued that potato led to empire. Potatoes, by feeding rapidly growing populations, permitted a handful of European nations to assert dominion over most of the world between 1750 and 1950. Potatoes allowed poorer populations such as the Irish, who are Europe's poorest people, to become some of its most well-nourished. In 1754, the population of Ireland was 3.2 million. Less than 100 years later, it was 8.2 million.
Wow.
It's about 6 million today, but we're just not going to dwell on that right now.
Oh,
The conquering armies of Catherine and Friedrich the Great stomped across Europe, forging new political realities, while the Enlightenment was in full swing with Voltaire and Rousseau sipping coffee in the Parisian salon. Northern Europe began to compete with their once undefeatable southern rivals, all on the back of a Peruvian tuber. The world population in 1750 was about 750 million. It hit 1 billion in 1830, 2 billion in 1930, and sits at about 7.7 billion today.
Wow,
Now,
that's
the
huge.
potato didn't cause people to have more babies, but it did keep them alive.
Right.
Obviously, the potato, glory be upon it, cannot claim full responsibility, but it was a major factor. The Native Americans gave the world 3/5 of the crops now in cultivation, many of which grew in regions once considered inhospitable. Corn grows where rice and wheat won't. Rice prefers semi-tropical zones, wheat enjoys more temperate zones. Corn can do both. Asians fell in love with the sweet potato, while Africans adopted corn and cassava, and they transformed their lives like the potato had the Europeans. Even though rice is awesome, it still has some of the problems of other grains. Drought or flood will wipe out the entire crop, which caused frequent famines in China. Once the opportunity presented itself, no one adopted American plants faster than the Chinese. Sweet potato arrived in China around the
They have a large
1560s, and
population
it
to
spread
feed.
rapidly because it didn't compete with rice. It instead grew in previously barren lands. Soon the poor of China had a reliable food source. Sweet potato took over their diet, so much so that to be called a sweet potato eater became a kind of classist insult. Now
Stupid.
China is the world's king or emperor
Oh,
of
really?
sweet potatoes, producing
I
more
didn't know
than
that.
anyone else on earth.
Wow.
But it's Africa, more than anywhere else, that has benefited from American crops. Nowhere else, bar the Americas, is as dependent on American plants. Why? Well, Africa got a bad hand when it came to staple crops. Very few of our cultivated plants originated in Africa. About 50 out of 640. Before 1492, the main food plants of Africa were millet and sorghum, which, according to scientists, suck eggs. They didn't do too well in Africa's tropical zones, but corn does. Corn is
Okay.
now Africa's most important crop.
How about
In the
that?
last century, Native American cassava has also soared in popularity due to being one of the most
I don't know
drought
what that
tolerant
is.
crops. It now feeds millions of Africans. Nigeria, for example, grows more cassava than any other food.
I don't know what cassava is. Is that similar to a potato or like a carrot or like a turnip or something? If you know what that is, maybe put a note in the comments. So I'm not really sure what it is. It looks like a root vegetable. And the way that it's looking is sort of reminding me of a potato or um, I don't know if turnip is the right. Yeah, like a turnip. Sort of reminded me of that look. But I've never heard of it. Cassava. Okay.
In their spread across the globe, Native American food plants transformed every nation's cuisine.
Okay.
Dishes that we imagine people have been eating for thousands of years are actually quite new. Chili became the essential ingredient in Szechuan sauces, along with adding their famous kick to Indian curry. Italians, once doomed to eating lasagna and pasta with carrot sauces or beet sauces, now embrace their one true love, the tomato.
Tomatoes.
Eastern Europe discovered red peppers and could begin their paprika addiction.
Okay.
Imagine a goulash without it. It's inconceivable. But in no other area are American crops so dominant as in snack foods. The Native Americans knew how to get their snack on. Imagine pancakes without maple syrup, or going to the cinema without popcorn, or crisps, or even a Snickers. They all have Native American origins, as well as tortilla chips, along with their tomato salsas and guacamole dips, vanilla and chocolate anything. All were raised by natives. But the crops that the Native Americans so carefully managed were not their only world transforming gift. They also gave us the glorious power of bird poop. Seriously, bird poop is some magical stuff. Ancient Andean farmers realized how to use fertilizers for better harvests.
Oh,
The
fertilizers.
best of
Okay.
these was guano. Bird poop piled up over thousands of years on the islands off the Peruvian coast. The Inca protected their guano like the invaluable resource that it was. To keep their guano stocks high, they made killing seabirds or disturbing their nests punishable with death. Doing this, the Inca built literal mountains of fertilizer. When Europeans became
Wow.
aware of the uses of guano in the 18th century, they went guano crazy. Soon, thousands of ships crisscrossing the ocean, filled to the brim with poop. In 1841, Britain imported 1,880 tons of guano. In 1843, it was 4,056 tons. In 1845, 219,764 tons. In less than 50 years, Peru exported 14 million tons of guano.
Oh my
Roughly
God.
$13
Is there any
billion
left?
worth today. Thus
13
began
billion.
Peru's prosperous age of guano.
Mm.
Guano became so essential that the US and Peru nearly went to war over it. Only the American Civil War got in the way before they could. There could have been a great bird poo war.
Yeah.
The age of guano acted as an early green revolution, the first step towards modern agriculture that has transformed our planet. The last 100 years has seen some incredible innovations in agriculture. Farms produce more than ever before, but the Native Americans remain the most influential developers of the world's foods. They gave the world a whole new set of crops and taught everyone how to grow them. In the creation of our modern history, in the telling of stories, the Native American farmer hasn't really been given a place.
No, they
Risk-taking conquistadors, proselytizing missionaries, and the political struggles of
Missionaries.
colonists, cowboys, and kings took central stage. But without the ingenuity of these native farmers, without the crops they developed over thousands of years, and their innovative ways to maintain them, most people wouldn't be alive today. There is no enlightenment without potato, or moon landing without corn. Cassava is lifting millions of people from poverty, while chocolate grants others a small taste of luxury. Our modern world has roots in a small Native American field.
Wow. Wow. Fantastic. Okay, so I did, how potatoes save the world, because I thought, okay, it'll be a little bit of an Irish thing, but it's not an Irish thing at all. It's a Native American thing, both North, Central, and South America. It's amazing. And the fact that they knew to plant the corn and the beans and the squash all together, and the way they interact and protected and provided nutrients to each other, that's amazing. Um, how much they knew back then, you know, we call them uncivilized or whatever, but they were very, very advanced. And so that's amazing. So fantastic. We're definitely going to have to do some more videos on, Native American history and what have you, because I imagine it's got to be absolutely fascinating. Okay, this is a great channel. Cogito, this is the second video that we've done watching them. I did subscribe so that way we can keep an eye on what they have to offer. Maybe we'll come back to them in a few weeks or whatever. But yeah, really enjoyable show, very informative. I like the cartoon format because it really makes it accessible to watch it, and it's a little bit humorous. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. So I hope you did as well. I do thank you for taking the time to watch the video, and I hope I'll see you again on our next video. Have a great day. Thank you.